I am launching SinisterShaf merchandise exclusively available during Shaftober 2017. So, if you are interested in purchasing a cup or a t-shirt, then please send me an email to SinisterShaf@gmail.com. The email address can also be found in the description box below. If you would like a piece of this merchandise, then please hurry, because it is only available for a limited time. The price for regular cups will be £8. For the colour changing cups, it will be £10. And t-shirts in black or white will be £12. These prices do not include postage, because postage may vary depending on where you live. I know, my first story was long and had a lot of common signs of haunting. This story is entirely different. My grandmother told me this in confidence, so I've left her unnamed and changed the names of the other person involved. Let me preface this with a little background about my grandmother, who lived in Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement. She's about the strongest woman I know. I've never seen her cry. She once worked in a steel mill, and she made her own hammer, steel handle and all, with her name engraved onto the side. She sleeps with it under her pillow. For as long as I've known her, she's had weapons in every room and a plan for a break-in through every entrance in her home. When she was in her mid-20s, she was with an abusive husband. She took her 5 kids one night, closed her eyes, and picked a place on a map to disappear to. That's how my family ended up where we are, in California. Too proud for welfare, she worked every day of her life. After moving to an entirely new area, she started working as a janitor at a nearby university. An hour commute from the home she could afford. Over the decades, she worked her way up, always sharp for job openings and advancement. At the time of this story, she was working in the financial aid department. Now, she certainly wasn't rich, and though she worked, she couldn't afford her own car. She either took the bus or carpooled with her co-workers. For more than 30 years, she rode on a dark highway at 4 a.m. to reach her job on time. One day, she was carpooling with her good friend Lisa. I don't know much about Lisa, as I've never met her. On this particular early morning sometime in autumn, my grandmother was driving the car so that Lisa could get a little bit of extra sleep. They frequently did this, so my grandmother was familiar with driving this road and this car. It was very dark, the sky thick with fog obscuring the stars. While my grandmother doesn't remember exactly, she believed it must have been the new moon because of how dark it was. They'd been driving for a while without seeing another car, either in front of them or behind them. The area we live in is very hilly, and as they began descending the first big hill, my grandmother saw a single light on the top of the hill behind them. She thought it must have been a motorcycle and didn't really consider it strange at first. Yet, as they continued driving, The light didn't move. It stayed at the top of the hill, but never seemed to get any smaller. It was bright white and far more luminescent than a single headlight should be. At this point, my grandmother turned to Lisa and asked, "Do you see that light behind us?" Lisa turned around in her seat and looked out the back windshield. "Yeah," she'd replied. "It's just sitting there." "That's dangerous. This is the highway." "Yeah, it is strange," my grandmother said absently, deciding to just keep driving and get to their destination. They were approximately 2 or 3 miles away from the light at this point, when suddenly, the light zoomed forward. That's the best way my grandmother could describe it. In less than a second, the light went from being at the top of the hill to just a couple car lengths behind them, the bright white lighting the cabin of their car. Lisa screamed, "Hit the gas! Hit the gas!" "What is that?" my grandmother yelled, pressing the pedal to the floor and making their medium little sedan rocket as fast as it could down the darkened highway. "I don't know," Lisa replied, turning fully in her seat to examine it. "Is it a motorcycle?" my grandma asked, but Lisa only shook her head. "I can't see, it's too bright," the other woman said. My grandmother continued to speed down the highway, her headlights barely cutting through the dark and fog, while the light behind them shone like a beacon. They started to outpace it, and after a few minutes they turned around a bend, and it seemed they'd finally lost it. Relieved, they each let out a nervous laugh and discussed what they thought they'd seen, trying to figure out if it had been some kind of racer or something else, just like any other friends that see something strange on the road together, but back before they could post on Facebook about it or something. For a few more minutes, they were finally safe, ready for this to be just a strange thing they'd tell their co-workers about later. But again, in only a split second, the road behind them was lit up white. Lisa started screaming and hitting my grandmother's shoulder. What? My grandmother asked. "What is it?" "It's back! It's back! What is that thing?" My grandmother said that all of her mirrors showed nothing but a bright white glare. But there was no sound at all. She couldn't hear another engine or see the outline of a car. In fact, the light was much bigger than it could have possibly been, maybe the size of a car all in itself. This time, it did not stay car lengths away. It came right up against the car, so close it almost seemed like it was pressing on the trunk. My grandmother said that at this point she was screaming as well and worried that they might crash. "I'm going to see what it is," Lisa said suddenly, rolling down her window. "Keep us on the road." "Are you crazy?" my grandmother asked. "I have to see it," Lisa insisted. "It's chasing us. I have to know what it is." The light kept getting closer, to the point that my grandmother said it was hard to even see anything. The light filled up her entire back window, then it slowly crawled up higher and higher. "It's on top of the car," my grandmother shouted. She said she'd never been more scared in her life, and not because she was certain she would die. Instead, she was scared because she had no clue what was happening. She said it was such a break from any kind of normality or reality that she was terrified to the quick of her soul. "I can almost see it," Lisa said, leaning her head out of the window. My grandmother was driving fast, and the cold early morning air whipped through the cabin, chilling them both. My grandmother said she smelled something, like rotten eggs or sulphur, but there was still no sound. The road was still empty, no other cars in sight, and no sound except their own struggling engine. "What is it?" my grandmother asked. "What the hell is it? Can we get it off?" The light was on the roof of the car, but it shone down into her side mirrors, so she knew it was still there. "I can almost," Lisa started to say before she shouted, "Oh God! Oh God!" "Lisa, what? What is it?" my grandmother kept asking. "Oh, no, 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 no," Lisa cried out, tears on her cheeks from either the intense emotion or the cold air hitting her eyes. Lisa leaned back into the car, her whole body shaking as she hurriedly rolled up the window again. My grandmother said the light stopped. It just stopped accelerating with them and hovered above the highway behind them. She was too scared to stop driving, but she saw it for a split second in the rearview mirror before it seemed to just zoom away again, faster than she could follow. Then the highway was empty. Lisa was shaking her head and sobbing, muttering the Lord's Prayer as they were both Catholic. My grandmother continued to try and ask Lisa what she saw, but the woman refused to answer. My grandmother described Lisa as friendly, assertive, reliable, and devout. She said the worst the woman could be was a little dim at times, but she'd never been weak-spirited or prone to dramatics. Lisa curled herself down into the footwell of the passenger seat, nearly in the fetal position, and cried for the rest of the drive, mumbling half-remembered prayers and things like, "No, God, no, please, no." The highway they were on eventually merges with a freeway that takes them to the university. Here, they finally saw other cars. My grandmother said she cried in relief as she finally saw the sky lighten with sunrise when they neared the university. She said that she was still wiping tears from her face once they parked. She had to bodily drag Lisa out of the passenger seat, and it took the other woman more than 20 minutes to recover. Even then, she appeared to be shell-shocked. My grandmother went to work with her a few more times after this event, but each time she tried to discuss what Lisa had seen, the other woman refused to talk. At first, she would either change the subject or remain quiet, but after a day or so, Lisa would reply by saying, "What are you talking about? That's crazy. I didn't see anything. Did we even drive together that day? I don't know what you're talking about." Their friendship suffered so greatly that within weeks they stopped talking altogether, and my grandma found a new carpool group. At the end of the story, I asked my grandma what she thought the light was, and she said she had no idea, but she knew it wasn't of this world. She didn't say whether she believed it was a spirit, or an alien, or just a glitch in the Matrix. We live near an Air Force base, and my grandmother even once had a friend that worked in Area 51 for a short period of time. She told me that she'd once asked her friend if he believed in aliens. He took a deep breath and more than 20 seconds to reply,
"I don't know if aliens exist, but I'll tell you, I've seen some things that I cannot explain. That's as much as I can say on the topic.
Of course, just because he worked there doesn't mean that he knew all of the secrets, or that he has a reliable opinion. My grandmother maintains that this was the scariest and strangest thing that ever happened to her. To my knowledge, she has only told this story a handful of times in more than 2 decades, and only ever to a small group of family members. Hello everyone, SinisterShaf here. This was the second installment to My Family's Scary Stories by VampieOreo. I would like to say thank you again to VampieOreo for giving me permission to narrate your stories. So, there is one more part to this series, which I will be uploading soon. I hope you enjoyed the 3rd day of Shaftober. If you did, then make sure to like the video and subscribe if you have not done so already. Also, remember to click on the bell icon to be notified when I next upload. As you would have seen at the beginning of this video, if you would like to purchase some limited edition Shaftober 2017 merchandise, then email me. My email can be found in the description box below. Also, follow me on Twitter and like my Facebook page. The links to those are also in the description box. Also, if you have any of your own stories that you would like to share with me, then email them to me, message them to me on Facebook, or DM them to me via Twitter. My email is SinisterShaf@gmail.com. If you do send me your own stories, then you will be in with a chance to be included in my Shaftober special. The video for Shaftober Day 4 will be up very soon. And, as always, stay sinister.